What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Advanced Sports Analytics Show presented by RotoGrinders. I'm your host, Travis Mangone, back with the usual suspects. We're all back here. Got Brandon back. So kick it off with us first, Brandon. How's it going over there?
Pretty good. I have an extra large cup of coffee this morning. I'm just getting started, fired up for another week.
Yeah, we're doing this on Friday morning rather than normally on Thursday. So maybe you got a little bit of extra research crammed in that brain there to give us to the people. Stewart, back to you. How's it going over there, man?
Been going good. Definitely have not been using the extra time to load up on research, but hoping to get that in before Sunday and hopefully hear some of y'all's thoughts and definitely process that into how I'm thinking about the weekend for sure.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about this slate. I think this is a really good one. I'm curious about your guys' thoughts, but before we do that, guys, please hit the like and subscribe on the channel for us. We would appreciate it so much. All you got to do, scroll a little down while you're listening to the video, hit like, hit subscribe right now. We would really, really appreciate it. Let's dive right in. Let's talk about the games. Today, we're going to go game by game. And Brandon, I'm going to start off with you because, man, this is a dream for you. I know how you like to build lineups. We got the Tampa Bay Bucks. We got the Atlanta Falcons, 51.5 total. All the wide receivers. I know you love those high upside receivers. We got Evans, Godwin, Julio. They might be a little bit chalky, though. So talk to me. What do you want to do with this game?
Hold up. Before we go there, I have to say that last week I was a consumer of the pod because I set out. And you missed the most blazing takes of the whole season. So first of all, Stewart called Josh Allen to John Brown to Knox as the key stack of the week, and then he also called return touchdown and Miami defense from who's the Miami punt returner again?
Jakeem
Grant. So they called both of those as like a solid 5 minutes of the show. And I don't know if you saw how the lineups came through last week, but Allen Brown to Knox was definitely the build. Knox was 1%. He didn't light it up, but he did have a receiving touchdown, and it was a relatively weak week for tight end. And he at 3,000, he was a very good build. And then you could have Devontae Parker coming back, who had 7 and 135.
I actually had one of that 3 Buffalo Devontae back, and it just I don't know, didn't even do that great. And I had like Michael Thompson there. I should have looked closely at what I had with the other pieces, but man, it's tough out there. It's like even when you get on that good 4-player stack, it's like if you don't have the nuts all around it, it's just like I don't know, wasn't even like scratching kind of top fraction of a percent or whatever, but yeah, I don't know. I think that worked out well, and I definitely think that spot that we attacked last week with Buffalo, thinking to attack this week with some of the Cleveland guys in similar spots. We'll get there when we get there, but back to Tampa Bay and Atlanta.
Yep, we can talk Tampa Bay, Atlanta. Back to you, Brandon, I guess, because listen, I want to get your takes on this because I was like hearing the high upside wide receivers from you. You're all about him. And is Julio too much chalk, I guess, is going to be a question for you because I think he's going to be a guy that a lot of people are on with all the air yards conversation. And, just playing against the Bucs, it's such a dream spot.
Yeah, no, not too much chalk. I think you have to roll with that. They've had some explosive games over the years, and it's almost like the New Orleans, Tampa Bay, Atlanta triumvirate. It feels as if it's a conspiracy to inflate statistics sometimes when those 3 get together in any combination. And I have always found that when those 3 are against each other, I just go with it, no matter what the ownership is. So that'll be where I am this week.
Alrighty, Stewart, talk about Atlanta too. I mean, listen, Julio, Ridley. I mean, this target share, we talk about this a lot, right? We talk about the condensed targets. We talked about it earlier in the year on some of these shows. And this is a situation where there's a funnel to only certain guys, right? They're not loaded up with all these different weapons and gadgets anymore. So many guys banged up, and they traded some people. How are you approaching the Falcons here?
Yeah, I'm wanting to pay, I think, particular attention to just like how I'm getting to these Falcon players. I was looking through just some of their correlations, and the Falcons are a good example of a team that's been kind of their receiving has been stable going back to 2018, I guess, with the subtraction of Mo Sanu, but I think so. It does provide for like a pretty long sample with Ridley, Julio, and I was noticing, interestingly enough, that like Ridley is the guy who has kind of the best correlation with some of the pieces that we might want to include as part of a stack. Like, Ryan, Ridley's got a 0.58 correlation dating back to 2018. Ridley's correlation with the opposing receiver or quarterback is quite high dating back to 2018. So, if we're thinking of maybe primary stacking Tampa Bay and running back an Atlanta guy, in Jones, that's kind of not the case. Like his correlation dating back 2018 with Matt Ryan is only like 0.16. So they more or less operate like independently of one another in terms of their, ability to reach like a ceiling or floor, which, I think is interesting. And Jones also has, either no or slightly negative correlation with opponent receivers or quarterbacks. So, to me, like the way these correlations set up, like Jones is the guy that I'm going to want to try to get if I'm like wanting exposure to this game within a lineup that maybe is stacked around another game. If I'm going with like a true, game stack through this game, Ridley to me seems like the guy who just correlates better with kind of the pieces I might want to include in that lineup. So I think, you kind of, I don't know. I don't necessarily know that you have to pick one or the other. Like Jones, Ridley have a slight negative correlation, but not so much where it's like a Godwin Evans or, Odell Landry, where it's like you have to pick one or the other. I do think there isn't, this is a game we could double stack. The correlation isn't quite as tight with those two guys, but it's not so, negative that, we can't be double stacking the Atlanta side. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a game where, there's so many, I think there's going to be a lot of ownership on this game, and there's a want to like get cute and creative and maybe try to go with someone, other than Jones or Ridley. But I don't know. I think to me, those are the two guys I'm going to want to build through when building this game on the Atlanta side. They just clearly seem to be like the guys who are getting the most volume with Sanu gone, with Hooper out. So that's kind of where I'm looking.
Yeah, definitely think we got to load up on those Atlanta guys. Brandon, maybe you got some tools over there at Advanced Sports Analytics that can answer the magical question every single week. Is it Mike Evans? Is it Chris Godwin? Which guy you got?
Well, I don't have that. My interest is more in trying to figure out the Kamara situation. Tampa Bay is not an ideal matchup, but the Kamara had a decent performance against Chicago, and I feel like he's such a threat in the passing game that I will play him pretty heavily this week. And this is setting up to be a week where it might be the week where you could play a lot of pieces in a stack. Typically, Stewart and I have both been in favor of sticking with high correlation cores and not having too many players in the same game. But I could easily see this setting up to be a game where you could have a lot of pieces. For one, these totals, the New Orleans, Carolina, and Tampa Bay, Atlanta totals are a good bit above the rest of the slate, and it might be a weather slate. Looks like it could be cold weather with lots of winds in the other games, and the New Orleans game and the Tampa Bay game, you have a lot of, or the Atlanta game, you have dome conditions. So I could see it being one of those 6 pieces in the game, get there at the top of the Millionaire Maker. With the first year that Advanced Sports Analytics started was the year that you had some extreme stacks win the Millionaire Maker. Like you had one where 4 offensive pieces from the Steelers won the Millionaire Maker one week. And when we looked at the data, it suggested that it's not a terrible build to have a lot of pieces from the same game, because when you have a true outlier total score, it becomes reasonably likely that all of the pieces can get there. As for Evans and Godwin, I haven't found the pattern. I haven't broken the code on that one. I'm a big believer in if you're getting the big odds, then just have A version and B version. You have the A version with Evans, and you have the B version with Godwin, and it's simple as that. That's pretty much the way I've been running it.
Yeah, I can see that. Some people do the whole 50% of lineups, Evans, 50% Godwin. I don't know if people are actually running that or they're joking. Is Ronald Jones a leverage play you can maybe go here, Stewart?
I was going to say, like, are we done with Ronald Jones? Because I don't know. He sets up nicely as like a correlate with the other side. Obviously, like if you're wanting to build through the Tampa Bay side, probably going with the Jameis receiver, run it back with Atlanta. But if you're trying to build on the Atlanta side and bring it back with Tampa Bay, I do wonder if, we get so attracted to the shiny objects in Evans and Godwin. Like Ronald Jones correlates very well with opposing receivers and quarterbacks. I could see, like, I think for Atlanta, like kind of the game script we want is Tampa Bay up big, Atlanta playing, from behind and just kind of airing it out with Matt Ryan. Ronald Jones, I'm definitely interested in. I think is a intriguing leverage play, has really nice correlation with the other side. I was just going to say, Ronald Jones, the guy I'm interested in. So, yeah, I like that call a lot.
Yeah, Jameis Winston, too. He's a guy that has a decent price tag, too. I know it's one of those weeks where some of the quarterbacks we want, they're a little bit priced up. You talked about the Saints game a little bit. You got Breeze there, who's the third highest priced quarterback. Ryan at 6,700 in this game. And then Russell Wilson, who's been phenomenal at 6,800. You can get Winston for 6,200. So not a bad spot there. Any other guys you want to kind of touch on in this game, Brandon, or do you want to move on?
I think we move on. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to throw in there Cam Brate. If OJ Howard is kind of continues to be in the doghouse, Cam Brate had a good showing last week, and I think is also another intriguing kind of leverage play off of Godwin Evans.
Yeah, are those 14 targets real? That is the question. I guess we'll have to see. Maybe stay tuned and try and see what Bruce Arians is thinking in that crazy mind of his. But let's move on. Let's go over to the next game, which is, against Brandon's Miami Dolphins. It's the Cleveland Browns and the Dolphins. 45.5 total. Browns about 11-point favorites. And the Browns, they're heavy favorites too. Their team total is at 28.25 over here on the RotoGrinders lineup page. We'll kick it off with you first, Stewart, because I think this is a team that you're going to be matched up with all the correlation plays, hoping for a big stack opportunity.
Yeah, I like this game a lot. This Miami team is one we wanted to attack last week with Buffalo, and that worked out, pretty well. I think for the first time in a while, like I'm really looking closely at Baker. Miami is just not a team that's going to generate a lot of pressure on the quarterback. And I think in the past, in games that Baker struggled this year, he's kind of struggled with getting time in the pocket. I expect him to have, more time to throw. Miami's got the second lowest opponent-adjusted sack rate in the league. And, I'm interested in, working this Cleveland side a good bit. It's not like the greatest correlation between receivers where, I feel super great about double stacking, on the Cleveland side. Landry and Odell have pretty strong negative correlation. It seems like only one really can have a big game for you, and they both kind of equally correlate with Mayfield. So there's not like one guy I think is the clear, front runner. I just think from a value standpoint, Odell seems, a little better value. Like he's only 700 more than Landry. And even though Landry's been quite productive this year, I don't know, 6'3" compared to Odell's 7, to me, makes me kind of side a little bit more towards Odell. So yeah, that's kind of the guys I'm looking at on the Cleveland side. I do think like Kareem Hunt is interesting. He's been pretty featured in the pass game, although it does, figure to be a game script that maybe isn't the most favorable towards him. But for me, I think I'm looking at the Cleveland side building through just a Baker and then Odell or Landry, but not both, kind of stacked.
Yeah, listen, Odell and Landry is an interesting conversation. Over on a site, Yahoo, Odell is actually cheaper than Landry, which is kind of crazy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's $22 and Landry's $24. So Odell's price is getting cheap. Brandon, talk to me about Nick Chubb. He's a guy that definitely we have to have some interest in. I'm sure he'll be in Stewart's cash game consideration. He's in mine, and I think he's a great tournament play as well. How are you approaching a guy like Nick Chubb against these terrible Dolphins?
Well, you have to worry about the Hunt roll there, tapping the upside. In cash games, I could definitely see it because I think he just gets there in the low 20s so often, and there aren't so many great options this week. But in tournaments, you're paying 8,100, and I just don't see him getting there too often because Hunt will have some carries, and I think he would just need kind of a freak game. I think he would need that one huge carry somewhere in there. I really don't see it for tournaments. I won't be there too much.
All right, I'm curious, Stewart, because I saw you shake your head and nod. I'm not as worried about Chubb. I think I worry about the equity with Hunt. That's the one concern. It seems like he's still getting the normal allotment of carries, and I'm not as concerned. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should be concerned. Are you?
If I could jump in, sorry for 1 second. It was sort of remarkable this past week that I always just go through the sharp players lineups just to see what's up. And I was surprised at how much play Hunt did receive in the sharp players lineups at min price, and he was ex post a good play to have in at min price. And there was some coach speak saying he was going to have a role, so you can see why guys took that play, and I can only expect that it might increase a tiny bit this week, but sorry.
Yeah, no worries. And he's 5,600. So listen, it's not the same bargain, but yeah, you are right. I did see the same thing. I heard some people talking about how Hunt was like higher owned by some sharper players than you'd expect.
But yeah, I think Chubb, makes sense in tournaments. You can make the case that he has the highest probability to get like 3 rushing touchdowns on the slate. McCaffrey is always in play, but just draws a tough matchup. And I think like Chubb's pricing next to the guy in cash I actually prefer is probably Kamara, but I expect Kamara to be very popular. So Chubb is an interesting, I think, pivot off Kamara, like at a similar price point. But I don't know. I'm not terribly interested in him in cash, just given the split, or not really the split, but just the role that that Hunt has kind of carved out. I think does give me some concerns about Chubb's upside, and you're kind of depending on him to get at least, like, I think a touchdown obviously is very possible, very likely, but I think at 800 or 8-1 you're kind of expecting him to get 2 touchdowns. So I don't know that he's really factoring into my cash consideration that much. I think for me, Kamara just feels like a little bit of a safer play given his just more dynamic involvement in the passing game. And I think he's just got like an equally as good matchup. But I think in tournaments, yeah, Chubb is interesting given kind of the price that he is at and the leverage you're going to get on a guy like Kamara. I don't know. Moving to the Miami side, since, last week we did try to run back against Buffalo, and I'm trying to pick like who would be kind of the primary run back option for Miami. Like Devontae Parker obviously has just been seeing a lot of volume lately. So that's a guy I'm interested in. Cleveland, I think we tweeted out a couple weeks ago when Cleveland was in that Thursday night game. They've actually been allowing a lot of volume to opposing tight ends. So, Gesicki is a guy that I'm interested in. We've kind of been, I think, chasing like his talent in the past couple of weeks where, it's a super talented guy who just kind of hasn't been able to put it together. And I believe his volume has been down a little bit the past couple of weeks compared to where it was like a few weeks ago. But I do think that's kind of an interesting kind of contrarian guy to bring back with, I don't know. I haven't really been paying attention to what Parker's ownership has been in recent weeks, but I feel like, I don't know, most people seem to be kind of on him. And, I do wonder if it's a good opportunity to maybe run back kind of a non-Parker Miami guy and, see if we can kind of get a little contrarian there with that bring back option. But those are some of the guys I'm looking at on the Miami side.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on Parker. He has gotten a little bit of ownership. Don't know how much traction we'll get on him. I believe the price is about like 5,300 or so.
It is up a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, it's up a little bit. But then again, everyone's kind of up a little bit. Everyone got like that little bit of price hike, which I'm okay with. Hoping some value opens up here today, later on in the day with the injury reports coming out for Friday. Brandon, how about you? I don't love too much on the Miami side. We haven't talked about Jakeem Grant yet. Is there a chance he breaks one up? I know Stewart called it, but you got a hot take on him or anyone else?
No, Grant, I think the role is too limited. I think the Devontae Parker price tag is appropriate with no Preston Williams. He's the guy that if you look at ASA distributional statistics, he's not a guy that historically has had a favorable distribution for tournaments. But last week was a great week. That was a tournament winning score when he put up 24 points at under 4,000. I think he's probably your first option in terms of a run back. I like Hearns a lot. Hearns just signed a new contract before last week's game, and he had a lot of almost good plays last week. It could have happened for him last week. I could see him being a great tournament play at 3,300.
All righty, let's go on to the next game. But before we do that, guys, I want to give a quick shout out to someone. His name is JME Holick. He actually watches the Advanced Sports Analytics show every single week. And the week before I got sick, he won $9,000. His FanDuel screen name, he wanted to get a little shout out. It's KOO21Q21. So just wanted to give you a shout out. Thanks for watching. Give us that like and subscribe. We'll really, really appreciate it. Let's jump on in. Let's go over to the next game. We got the New York Giants. We got the Chicago Bears. 39.5 total. Earlier in the week, this game had a 40.5 total, so it's down one entire point. When I first looked at this game, I thought, man, there are some interesting pieces, right? The Giants secondary is bad, so Allen Robinson could be intriguing. Saquon Barkley could be great because the Bears, they are horrible against the run. But, man, this is a 39.5 total. I don't know what to do with it, Stewart. I hate playing low totals. Talk to me about this game.
I know. I'm like it's a terrible total. And the Bears offense has just been like atrocious this year. I like it from a correlation standpoint. Like Trubisky correlates really well with all three of his receivers. And there's some pretty good like between receiver correlation between Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller. And like the Giants are so bad defensively against QB and wide receiver. Allowing, I think they have the second most DraftKings points per pass attempt allowed to opposing quarterbacks. I would like to try to get a little bit of exposure to this Chicago team. It's like not a team I'm gonna, be building around a ton, but I think like, God, last year, like I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around like how good of a fantasy quarterback Mitch Trubisky was last year and how just atrocious he and that Chicago offense have been this year. And I don't know if we think like what we've seen from Trubisky and this Chicago offense so far this year is kind of like the steady state who he is and what this offense is going to be. Yeah, man, it's a game you don't want any part of. it does feel like a spot where, maybe we could kind of get some 2018 magic from this Chicago offense and Trubisky if he plays. And I think that's something to pay attention to. Like if Trubisky versus Chase Daniel plays, I don't know. I'm a little intrigued by it, but probably bad take. But I'm a little interested, to be honest. Even with the low total, I think Trubisky's price is way down. And if we can just recapture some of that 2018 magic, I do think this is a pretty interesting, passing attack. And I would like to think that Daniel Jones and kind of the Giants will maybe push Chicago a little bit, kind of in your ideal game script for Chicago. So it's a game I'm a little interested in, to be honest. But I don't know, a bit of some thin options here for sure. But have a little bit of interest on mine.
Yeah, Brandon, is this a catch me up game? Or are we just moving on to the next one so we can talk your Panthers Saints, or you got any interest here?
Yeah, I think it's a catch me up game. For me, I will play pretty much no one in these games, just sort of take it off the board. With Chicago, I don't see them as terrible against the run. I see it as a complicated picture. It was in fantasy, a lot of people were swayed by the early season game where the Bears played Monday Night Football against the Redskins, and the defense looked unbelievable. The defense, arguably, they just played unbelievable, and so people expected that would be the way that it went for the whole season. And then a lot of sharp players were on Chicago defense like the first 4 weeks of the season, and it wasn't so great. And then they've kind of been a bit bad since then, but they're still ranked 8th against the run. And they're not very far from really the top against the run. But it's complicated because the last 3 games they've been middling of the pack against the NFL, and there's a big home away split. They're bad away from home against the run, and in this case we'll be home. I still respect the defense, and I respect the total of 40, and the work Advanced Sports Analytics has done suggests that you should stay away from these games even more than you think you should stay away from these games.
I agree with you. So let's move on. Let's talk about your boy, Alvin Kamara, and the 46.5 total with the Saints and the Panthers. They're about 10-point favorites here, Brandon. Kick it off with Alvin Kamara. Sounds like he's going to be one of your top plays this week. What are you doing with the Saints side of the ball?
So I think you roll him. He's been it's been looking like he's very healthy, about to break out. Carolina's 27th against the run. He's had the passing upside recently. I think you might see some stat lines like you saw a couple years ago.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think we're going to get a big game from him. I think we're also going to get a pretty big game from Michael Thomas. I mean, both these guys are just getting peppered with targets from Drew Brees. Stewart, Michael Thomas is basically a running back at the receiver position. Let's just say it straight. What do you want to do with Michael Thomas? Cash games, tournaments? How are you kind of approaching him?
I think, I don't know. I haven't looked that closely at Michael Thomas. I'm more interested, like Carolina, I really want to attack on the ground and not through the air. And I think, if you're going with both Kamara and Thomas, both those guys are priced, pretty high. And I definitely think it kind of limits your ability to, it's just going to force you down in other places. So I think on the New Orleans side, if I'm wanting to spend up on one of those guys, Kamara is the guy in cash. In tournaments, I think, Michael Thomas, just given his price proximity to Kamara, makes it, an interesting play as just some leverage on Kamara. I don't think also, it's inconceivable to run both of them together in tournament lineups. They've actually had pretty good correlation in the past for running back, wide receiver. So yeah, I mean, I'll probably lean more closely towards Kamara, but yeah, Thomas isn't completely out of play for me.
Yeah, have to love both those guys. Let's talk about the Panthers side of the ball, because you got to run it back with Christian McCaffrey. Brandon, are you going to run it back with him, or is it too much of a salary? I think he's at a point now that you're on the show. I think he's a little priced up. Cash games, I think you put him in, but tournaments, he might be a little too pricey to get him in there and run it back. What do you think?
Well, you know my opinion. I've believed that you shouldn't play him in tournaments close to this 10K range. I'm sticking to that. It maybe at this point it has become an emotional decision. Sorry about that. Maybe at this point it's become an emotional decision. Like a stock that you're married to. It's something that I won't get away from. But I do believe the data. You've heard my arguments on this show quite a few times. But you don't want to weight your tournament lineup with a $10,500 player. It really lessens the probability that you get to the kind of 240 plus score that you're going to need to win a tournament by quite a bit.
Yeah, listen, I don't disagree with you. I think it's kind of difficult, at least in tournaments, at the price tag. Stewart, how about you? Listen, we're not arguing in cash games. He's a great play, but tournaments, that price tag's a little hefty.
Yeah, I mean, New Orleans, like their strength against the run is, I think, well documented at this point. Like I played Christian McCaffrey in cash last week against Atlanta. Like that was a spot we wanted to attack. I don't think New Orleans is a defense that really sets up well for McCaffrey. And at 10-5, like, he's a guy I'd be interested in playing in the right matchup, but against a really, really tough New Orleans defense, not a guy I'm super interested in, and certainly not tournaments, and even in cash, to be honest. It's 10-5 is just a lot to pay for a guy, and I think this week is a particularly tough week to find value at the lower end as of now. And if there's not some cheap value that opens up, I think it becomes really difficult to play McCaffrey. Yeah, I don't know. The correlation that was standing out to me, actually, I forgot to mention is, Kamara, New Orleans Saints D. I think, we don't really spend that much time talking about defense, but that's a defense that can get some pressure on the quarterback. Kyle Allen looked atrocious last week, and I'm not really convinced. I don't think he's going to be that bad moving forward, but I'm not convinced. He's a quarterback that can really challenge defenses. But yeah, no McCaffrey for me, or not very much McCaffrey for me this weekend. I don't want to say no here on Friday, but I think it's just a really, really tough spot for him. New Orleans so good against the run at 10-5. It's just a lot to pay for, one of the worst possible matchups you could draw.
By the way, on the earlier I realized that when I was talking about the Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Atlanta triumvirate, I brought up Kamara a little early before I got my coffee in. But I wanted to say on McCaffrey, the problem with playing a 10-500 guy is, first of all, with our starting salary, you are trying to target that 250 point score for winning a big tournament, winning like a $300 tournament, or winning a Millionaire Maker. So of course, it's, as a whole, a simple way to think about it is you need 5 times. Now, it is true, of course, you're much more likely to get the big multiples from your 4K guys. But at 10-500, your best case scenario is you're getting a multiple of 3.5 times or whatever. It puts a high expectation burden on the rest of the lineup. But the point that I want to make is more that it also makes correlation work against you, because basically you're playing 10-500 in one spot, and for you to win, you're going to need to hit on every 3 to 5K player that you have. And all of those guys, by their nature, are uncorrelated. And you're going to be playing McCaffrey on an uncorrelated way because he's the only person you can play in this game if that's the stance that you're taking. So you pretty much have to hit on every spot on an uncorrelated basis, and you compare that to an alternative strategy where, for instance, you stack at Atlanta pieces or something, and now everything is correlated, and you still have the high upside. So for me, from a tournament construction thing, it's a simple argument, but it's pretty clear that you shouldn't be playing him.
No, it's great insight there. I love the conversation that we're having here. I think running it back with like guys like DJ Moore and Samuel is the better route to go and the better approach if you want to. Listen, let's go on to the next game though, because we're getting a little bit behind. I think this is a game that we can breeze through though. We got the Broncos, we got the Bills. We already talked about a low total, but this one's even lower. 37.5 total. Stewart, I know you called the Josh Allen, Knox, and Brown combo. Can we do it this week, or do we just move on to the next?
Yeah, this is a tough game. I mean, both these defenses are very good. Against quarterbacks, against Buffalo's a little exposed at running back, but yeah, this is a game I want really nothing to do with. Such a low total, two good defenses. I'm fine to move on.
Same with you, Brandon. I think we don't touch this game at all.
Yeah, let's do it.
All righty. Next game, we got the Lions, we got the Redskins. Again, 40.5 total. I have more interest in this because there's a quarterback here in Driscoll where he's kind of got a little bit of legs and he's cheap. Those mobile quarterbacks are a good thing on DraftKings. Take it off first, Brandon. Any interest in this game, or is this another catch me up?
No, not a catch me up. This Detroit has always been your perfect tournament team. They flash upside at unlikely times, and all of the individual pieces are just sort of high upside kind of pieces. Galladay and Jones have had very disproportionate representation in tournament winning lineups over the years. And the Driscoll downgrade is not a positive, but I still think you can roll these guys. I still think they have upside. So I will definitely have sprinkles of Galladay and Jones. And then on Washington, McLaurin is priced a little too high. He has cash game characteristics. He doesn't, for me, have the tournament winning upside, but he does project to have a lot of volume. I think at 6K though, he's not playable. Richardson has been an upside guy historically. It's like a kind of sub 5% kind of piece in tournament lineups, but I would say it's the kind of game where you want sprinkles, right? You don't want to make these guys core to your tournament strategy, but Jones and Galladay have had tournament winning upside, and they've done it in unlikely spots before. They're just talented, fast guys.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is a game. Maybe you can put a little bit of sprinkle on it. Maybe a little Jeremy sprinkle there, Stewart, or some Darius Geis. Like, I actually don't mind him. I think he could be sort of kind of interesting if he becomes a value, right? If he somehow becomes the bell cow. If the coach says on Friday, we're going to feed Geis. That's something I'm watching for and looking for. How about you?
Well, I'm not that familiar with Geis. Is he like a factor in the pass game in any way, or not really?
He ended up getting the first week against the Eagles. I mean, he had 3 targets, 3 catches, and the last week he had 2 targets, and he wasn't the full, getting the full workload. Yeah. So I'm kind of in wait and see approach. Like, once I see it, if I don't have value, I'm going to jump on it and at least consider it, right? I'm not just going to plug it in right away, but I'm going to talk about it and think about putting it in.
That's interesting. I mean, I think Detroit's a team we like to attack with running back. They're pretty bad against running backs on the ground. But they're actually leading the league, allowing the most fantasy points per running back target. So their team, I'm particularly interested in tagging a running back with a pass-catching running back. It sounds like Geis is not like, Miles Sanders level kind of pass catching back, but it sounds like he factors in a decent bit. So yeah, I'm intrigued there. Like I said, I'm not that familiar with guys, so got to maybe do a little more research on him. But yeah, the Detroit side, I mean, the wide receivers are how, I'm wanting to attack Washington. They're allowing the second highest catch rate to opposing wide receivers. Allowing the highest catch rate, second highest DraftKings points per target to opposing wide receivers. Adjusted for kind of opponent's baseline catch rate and DKP per target. That's kind of where I want to look with the Detroit side. I do think, Detroit's become a little more difficult to project in recent weeks, entering a little bit like, old Los Angeles Rams territory. Like Amendola has factored into the passing game and not in an insignificant way. It's become not as condensed, of a market share as, we would have, I think, expected coming into the year. So I do think something to pay a little bit attention to. But yeah, I do, like the Detroit wide receivers. Galladay, Jones historically have been guys that are tough to run together. They kind of negatively correlate in a pretty significant fashion. So, I think it's a little bit of a tough game to like double stack up. But I think Driscoll to Galladay, Driscoll to Jones are compelling, pairs that we might be interested in.
Agree with you guys on that. Let's move on. Let's talk about the Raiders. Let's talk about the Jets. 46.5 total here. And I think this Raiders side of the ball is really intriguing in the pass game. We like having road favorites, right? A guy like a Derek Carr, a Tyrell Williams, and Waller. I think this is a really interesting stack combo that you want to look at in tournaments. Brandon, kick it off to us. You got any interest in this 46.5 total here?
Yeah, I mean, Oakland's been a great target all year. Josh Jacobs, he's got the right characteristics for tournaments. He breaks big plays. He catches a lot of passes. He gets a lot of volume. I think he'll be pretty central, actually, in my tournament builds. Tyrell Williams, you've seen a lot of concentration there, especially in the second half of the season. When he was at San Diego, he was a piece that wasn't getting a lot of share, but then he was with Rivers, right? When he was with Rivers, he wasn't getting a lot of share, and he would flash every once in a while. Now he's in a situation that's been unique in his career, where he's having very heavy target share, and he's been performing well in the second half of the season. So I think he can be a good target, and this is as high as his DFS price has ever gotten, around 5,900 in this high 5Ks, some 6K range, I think last week. So he's definitely a tournament guy, and then Waller, your high upside tight end, perfect tournament characteristics.
Yeah, I love Waller. I think he's a great play. I'm going to struggle picking between Waller and Ertz. That's going to be one of my big debates, I think, this week, Stewart. What are you doing with this Oakland pass game? And then touch on the Jets, too, because I think there's some really good opportunity here for a guy like a Jamison Crowder.
Yeah, I mean, Oakland, both these teams are teams you want to attack on the outside with receiver. Oakland in particular, really susceptible to receivers, allowing, second highest wide receiver air yards market share so far this year. And it's a kind of a defense that you would want to go the Robbie Anderson route with, just given historically Robbie Anderson's kind of route tree. But I mean, Robbie Anderson just has not been very involved in the pass game this year, and Jamison Crowder really has. Not in love with Jamison Crowder's price tag this week, but from a tournament perspective, I mean, we've seen him have access to big, 10 catch games. So yeah, I mean, I think both teams' receiving cores in particular are in play, and that's kind of where I would look to build through this game. The Oakland side, I mean, Tyrell Williams, I think, has been just a pretty reliable guy this year, and a guy I think I would look to incorporate a good bit. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about this game. Quite frankly, Jacobs isn't really in play for me in a big way. Like, Jets have been tough against the run, and Jacobs hasn't really shown a whole lot of pass catching upside. I think I'm probably a little more in favor of both teams' receiving cores.
Yeah, I'm with you. Which guy sticks out to you, Brandon? Any receiver on the Jets that you want to go with, or are you maybe on the opposite side with Le'Veon Bell, who's been a bell cow, but not so great?
That's a little historical bias by my standpoint. It is true Jets are first against the run this year. So, I will still have a little bit of Jacobs in tournaments. I think he has some good characteristics. Anderson, he historically has been that big play guy, but it hasn't seemed to happen in quite a while.
Yeah, it's been quite frustrating with what's been going on with Anderson, but I get it. Sprinkling him in is going to make some sense. Let's move on to the next game. And listen, again, I think this is one of the nastier games of the slate that we move on to. When we have good games of these teams going up against each other, like the Niners and Packers on Sunday Night Football, we get these duds. Because if the good teams are playing each other, then some of the bad teams got to play each other. We got the Steelers. We got the Bengals. 38.5 total here. I get it. It's the Bengals. But Jalen Samuel being 7,200 on DraftKings is just insane. I'm not going to touch it, I don't think. The only guy I really have not a lot of interest, but a little interest in this game is probably going tight end with Vance McDonald because there's no Juju, and then maybe run it back with a Boyd. But again, it's a 38.5 total. What am I doing? Stewart, talk to me about this game, or is it a catch me up?
Yeah, we can talk about it a little bit, but you're right. The Jalen Samuels price tag it's like a guy I would want to play for about 1,500 less. Was it 7.3 or whatever? Is just pretty high, given especially Benny Snell is going to be back. Mason Rudolph is in a good spot, but I don't know. His tournament winning upside is not very high. I'm a little interested in some of the Pitt pass catchers. McDonald's a guy. It looks like Deontay Johnson is going to play, and Cincinnati's been pretty exposed against opposing receivers. If you think Cincinnati can maybe find a way to keep the game close and not force Pitt into such a run-heavy script, a little interested in Deontay Johnson. On the Cincinnati side, Auden Tate probably will be out, and he's a guy that's kind of we were really interested in him way back when when he was sub 4. His role was sustainable up through last week. I think him being out will open up some volume for some of the Cincy guys. Tyler Boyd hasn't been getting quite the volume he would like, and if you're owning him, you would like. I think it could be a spot where there's a little more volume opened up for him. Modestly intrigued by him. But yeah, in general, not a game I'm really trying to build heavily on or lean on for kind of a stacked lineup for tournaments.
Agree. I don't want to touch too many guys in this game, Brandon. How about you? Are we moving on, or are we actually playing some guys here?
I think you can play Mixon. It's interesting, Stewart. Who was the host with you last week?
Jordan Cooper.
Jordan. Yeah, he's such an eccentric mind, but I've never seen someone who thinks about the game so similar to myself. He has a strange way of thinking about things that I think it's appropriate for tournaments. With this game, okay, all of our research, Stewart, suggests that you should never play fantasy guys in this game. They're especially for tournaments, their probability of having ceilings is their probability of hitting the kind of outcomes we need for tournaments is very low. But last week with Jordan, he mentions, okay, when you have these really low totals like Cincy at 15 and 15.8, you can sometimes look for the really good pieces, because although Cincinnati is basically never going to score 35 points, right? Sometimes they just get one extra touchdown, and they, instead of scoring 15.8 points, they're right at around 22, 23. Now all of a sudden they're viable, and you have Mixon, who is going to have all the volume, is up against the worst running defense. Pittsburgh's
good at run.
Yeah, they're good at the run, since he's bad at the run. But he's viable. He could easily have the 2 touchdown performance. He's probably it's probably going to be a Mixon and Boyd show all the way around, and you can run him.
Yeah, listen, I get it. And listen, I know Blunder, Jordan, he has that crazy mind. I think you like the contrarianness. I get it. It's tough. My big thing is I just think like the NFL totals are just so efficient. And not saying that I want to like gravitate towards like, only the high totals because that's where everyone goes, right? But like that total is so low.
Well, they are so efficient at telling you the speed of the game. But when you have these 2 touchdown totals, it really is a matter that from a DFS tournament perspective, sometimes a guy who's a good play with the 2 touchdown total is an amazing play if they happen to score 3 touchdowns. And it's not so unlikely that they go from 2 touchdowns to 3 touchdowns. Anyway.
All righty.
What it's very good at telling you is that this game has an extremely low probability of hitting 60 fantasy point total. It's never going to happen. And Cincy has a very, very low probability of hitting a 30 point total. But it's not telling you much in terms of, okay, is Cincy going to score 16 or is Cincy going to score 23?
Yep, that's totally fair. Let's move on to the next game, though. This one, I mean, it's a juicy one. I think it's one that we'll definitely talk about, and curious to hear how you guys are approaching it. We got the Seattle Seahawks. We got the Philadelphia Eagles, 47.5 total here. Eagles, they are 1 point favorites. Here's the thing I'm asking you guys, and we'll kick it off with you first, Brandon. Chris Carson, he's a bell cow, but are you worried about maybe running him against this, against this Eagles defense? They've normally been typically pretty good against the run. How are you approach this? Or are you just loading up with Russell Wilson and that whole Seattle receiving core?
Philly's been really weak against the pass, and I will continue to go there. I had by far my best week of the season 2 weeks ago where I just rolled the chalk with Wilson, and it was very, very good. I think Seattle will play in a straightforward way and attack Philly through the air, and you just play it in the obvious way and take Wilson, Lockett.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know if I worry about Lockett's injury. He's going to be fine, it sounds like. But Wilson, Lockett, Metcalf, who's a little bit cheaper. Stewart, are you going with that Seattle pass attack as well?
So I got some short form stats for you guys. I'm just curious to know, how you're factoring this in, or if you will. Because yeah, I mean, Philly is a team. I think we hear people talk a lot about wanting to attack through the air. Over the last month, which has only been 3 games for Philly, they're allowing the 4th fewest. This is against opposing wide receivers. 4th fewest fantasy points per target, 4th lowest target market share. 5th lowest fantasy points per air yard, 2nd lowest catch rate to opposing receivers. They've been, the short statistics would suggest that they have been fairly staunch against opposing wide receivers. And I know like this is a spot where, and the game script figures to be nice and balanced, which is, pretty good for, using Seattle receivers. It's a game I'm a little interested in trying to kind of take a stand and just be like, I'm going to maybe ride some short Philadelphia statistics. I don't know. It's curious, if you guys kind of have any thoughts there, but it has been interesting to me and kind of noteworthy. Philadelphia has been actually fairly effective against opposing receivers in the last month or so. I don't know. If we're riding along statistics, it's a game that sets up terrifically for Wilson and Lockett and Metcalf. Even Jacob Hollister. If we're at all interested in kind of some of the short stats, though, I do have some concern on the Seattle side, and then obviously Philadelphia's effectiveness against the run pretty well documented, which makes Carson a tough play. I don't know. It's a spot I'm a little interested in kind of taking. A tournament stand and just, being underweight on the Seattle receiver side and trying to find other spots to be a little overweight. Just a thought. That's
an interesting slice of the data because I don't know if there was a spot where there was more of a divergence between popular opinion and sharp opinion than the condition of the Eagles defense at the start of the season. Because Eagles defense, in popular opinion, I think has rightly been viewed as very strong. And at the start of the season, the popular opinion expected that it would be strong for this year, but the sharp commentators expected that they would be, in particular, very weak against the pass. And that turned out to be very true for the first part of the season. But I could believe that it's changed in the last 4 or 5 games. I'll have to take a closer look at that. Certainly the 4-year, without regard to the conditions of specific personnel, the 4-year performance has been very good.
Yeah, so I agree with you guys. I know that they've gotten a little bit better, and it's because Ronald Darby's back. I think that plays somewhat into it. But I mean, some of the situations then, like they went up against Mitch Trubisky. We know Josh Allen can have his struggles at times, and that game ended up just becoming kind of out of hand. So I don't know. I'm kind of confused at like what to do here. Again, it's like a conversation I had that we're really talking about. Let's talk about the Eagles side of the ball, though. Stewart, I think Wentz is going to be a guy that people gravitate towards, and those tight ends this week, going with Dallas Goedert, going with a guy like Zach Ertz. How are you approaching the Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, I've been, I think, pretty high on Goedert in my play in the past month or so. I mean, he's a backup tight end, but he has been very involved in the pass game. Seems to be actually more of a red zone target than Ertz, and Ertz is kind of the get us to the red zone target. But once they're there, I mean, Wentz has been looking Goedert's way a lot in the red zone, and we've seen his price rise a little bit, but definitely a guy I'm still intrigued in with all those injuries to the Philly receiving core, and that's a guy, I'm interested in. And Miles Sanders, I mean, he kind of was a bit of a dud last week, but going up against a very challenging, New England front seven, he's a guy who has factored in the pass game, and if he's kind of the primary running back with Jordan Howard out, I think there's just really good value there, and will allow you to get up to some of the more expensive plays, either quarterback or some of the receivers that we might want to get up to, and either in this game or in some of the other like Atlanta receivers. So I think Philly side, that's kind of where I'm looking at, either of those two tight ends and Miles Sanders. I think he just offer pretty good value, and Sanders in particular, just really nice salary relief at the running back position.
Yes, Sanders is going to be, I think, one of those plug-and-play guys if Howard ends up being out. What are you doing with a guy like a Miles Sanders in this Eagles offense, Brandon?
Well, I was usage-wise, obviously Miles Sanders was chalky last week.
He saw 85% of the snaps, and that hasn't been done in Philly since 2016. So I think that shows like the coaches do like him. I know the number he put up last week was kind of a dud, but I just thought that was one thing to note.
Yeah, he looked good, but I would say the last 20 snaps he played, I'm not sure what he was doing on the field. Why he had basically zero involvement in the last 20 snaps, and I couldn't figure out why. They didn't trust him when it mattered. Put it that way. He was out there, but it didn't. I was a little bit surprised at the lack of usage in the fourth quarter, for instance. So yeah, he rates as maybe the highest value this week, and he will be justly popular, but I have my doubts about his exact upside. Ertz, very, very strong play. He'll be central to lineups, and that's about it.
Alrighty, yeah, listen, we don't got too much longer. We got 12 minutes left, so we got 2 games, though. I think we can handle it. This one's a 41.5 total, and of these, 40 totals we've talked about, this is the one I'm most excited about. Jaguars, Titans. I think Derrick Henry could have a massive game. Leonard Fournette. We saw the Jaguars. They discussed that, Fournette, he did not see the ball enough. He needs to run the ball more. He needs to get more touches. So there's that narrative going there. There's also some of these receivers, I think, that are interesting on the Jag side of the ball. Stewart, kick it off for us. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, you got to like Fournette's just volume. He always is just factoring in the run game, a big part of the passing game. Jacksonville, Shark in particular, seemed to respond pretty well to the, return of Nick Foles. But yeah, I mean, Derrick Henry, a guy you touched on, is a guy I'm just always interested in. His big play potential is just pretty exceptional. And, I think a lot of people try to talk themselves away from Henry because he's, a zero in the pass game when he's not, an elite pass catcher, but he's hasn't been a zero in the pass game this year. He's, I think usually good for 2 or 3 targets a game, which, maybe isn't your ideal kind of prototype for a 6'9" running back. But Jacksonville really bad against the run. They're, second in opponent adjusted fantasy points allowed per rush attempt. And that's Derrick Henry's bread and butter, right? It's just give give him 20 or so carries. Hopefully 1 or 2 of those he's able to break off, a big 50-plus yard run and, give him an opportunity to score 2 touchdowns. Tennessee loves giving him the ball around the goal line. He, isn't quite like, your Christian McCaffrey every down back, but he, is your goal line back. He's your, bell cow whenever you're trying to run the ball at any point of the field and really, can score from, any position on the field. I like Derrick Henry a lot this week. I think he's not, a typical cash play building block, just given his limited pass catching role. But I'm definitely considering him in cash this week. And I think always just a really strong tournament play and probably even more so on FanDuel, which, I don't really play, but the, reduction in PPR or reduction in points per reception is even more so more so favored towards Henry. So those are some of the guys I'm looking at in this game.
Yeah, he's priced up. He's 8,400. He's either the second or third highest price running back, really? I think. Okay. Yeah, he's actually got a pretty hefty price tag. Leonard Fournette's only $7K over there, which again, these are 2 volume grabs, Brandon. I think you're going to have a little bit of interest in. Which volume running back are you interested in most?
I think maybe for tournaments, Fournette by a stab, and at FanDuel, the high price shouldn't deter you. He's I think you can just roll it even in tournaments. I think Henry's a really strong play. I think both running backs are very good, and Jacksonville and Tennessee, they both have strange properties as teams where they tend to be in low total games, but they're the teams that they often just break out into these higher scoring situations that are seemingly out of nowhere. So although this is your low total game, it's not the boring low total games that we've gone over in the past. It is a game that has the possibility of getting up there a little bit. Both of those teams, they flash those occasional higher scores, and it's the nature also of the individual pieces can tend to be a little bit more volatile.
Yeah, is there a piece on the receiving core that you have any interest in, like a DJ Chark, a DD Westbrook, or maybe one of the Titans receivers that could flash some upside if you want to get a small piece this game, not through the running backs?
Yeah, you're making a pretty big equity trade-off there. Shark, the price is kind of higher than I feel like you want to go this week. You can do it as a sprinkle, but I don't really love the receivers just because I think you're giving up a lot of equity this week.
Isn't Corey Davis, is he expected to be back this week for Tennessee?
Let's see.
If he is, I think AJ Brown's a guy I've kind of swung and missed on at the pass with Davis out, but if Davis is back in, I think that Tennessee passing game becomes tough to
he returned to practice. So I think the only guys you're kind of you're not really touching the Tennessee receivers, I don't think. I think it's Chark and Dede are kind of in the combo, I think. And like Didi's price is pretty cheap. I think that's one reason why. I think maybe it's like people like me who, took him early on in the season and best balls. We're still banking on it because of the Nick Foles connection, right? Now that he's there. But we only got 7 minutes left and we got one more game and it's a good one. So let's move on to that one. We got the Cowboys. We got the Patriots. 45 total here. I believe this total is trending down. This is a game where there's a lot of studs, right? A lot of different players you can go to. We'll go to you first, Brandon. What do you think on the Cowboys side of the ball? Because if you look at these guys, they got some price decreases. I mean, Gallup, he's only 5'9". He got a little bit of an increase, but Amari Cooper, he's 6.6K, which is kind of cheap for a guy like Amari. What are you doing with this Cowboys offense? Maybe they're going to feed Zeke. Lots of different ways that they can go.
Yeah, Zeke is your strongest individual piece. It looks like a little bit of a weather game. We're going to have to watch that. Heavy rain, high winds, low temperatures. We're going to have to see what's going on there. It might figure out to be important, and I'm sure that's why the total is dropping. Also, this is the time of year where we need to start looking at league standings and figure out what's going on. It feels I haven't looked, but it feels like Dallas is probably in that situation where they're probably in must-win kind of territory. Is that right?
They have to listen. They're not probably getting the wild card. The wild card is kind of locked up by Seattle and the Vikings. Not completely, but it's going to be tough to grab that.
They're dead.
No, they're not dead. They're fighting for the division. It's just a dogfight. It looks like pie between the Eagles and the Cowboys. That's really where they're going to kind of be landing at. Those two are just fighting so they have a shot, but it's like really for the division. I mean, Eagles, they're 5-5, and the Cowboys, I have a record right here. It's taken too long to load, but they're basically going to fight for the division. Yeah, Cowboys, they're 6-4. So 2 games back of the wild card. So I think they know they got to start winning games because the Eagles are breathing down their necks.
Yeah. So, I mean, in that situation, you might upgrade Zeke a little bit. You might upgrade Zeke a bit for the weather, although it's always tough because the weather like this favors the run game, but it also decreases the other weapons' potential. And if you're up against a really tough team, tough defense like New England, it can just shut down everything. But I think you want to say it's Zeke because must-win game, Zeke conditions, they have to run him into the ground in this spot.
I get it. I haven't played it much this year. Are you worried with what the situation's going on with him? Like, he just hasn't really gotten going. It's just been kind of rough.
Yeah, but I've been watching the games, and last week, Pollard had a big score. Pollard had like 20 fantasy points, 15, 20 fantasy points out of nowhere or something. But he's a 0% season-long kind of guy, and I don't see that. I especially now with them needing to win, I think it's Zeke. To me, I have been watching the Cowboys games, and it seems like his lack of performance has been a little bit random. He looks healthy. It looks like they want to give him the opportunities. He seems on the cusp of good plays. He doesn't look worse than previous years. It just seems like a little bit random to the eyeball test.
How about you, Stewart? Is it random? Who are you interested in the Cowboys receivers? And a guy like Julian Edelman, don't sleep on him on the opposite side. I think he's going to be one of the better plays this week.
Yeah, I mean, I've been kind of avoiding playing guys against New England. Their defense is really good, and I think both on the ground against really the positions they dominate are running back, quarterback, and wide receiver. The one area where they're a little exposed, I think, is tight end. We saw Ertz and Goddard actually, I think, fare quite well against New England. But, I mean, I don't know. Jason Witten's not really a guy I'm like that interested in rolling out there. I don't know. For me, I think it's a straight fade on Cowboys guys. Man, New England's defense is just really, really tough. They put pressure on the quarterback. They are, really stopping the run really well and limiting pass catching opportunities for running backs out of the backfield. At kind of the elevated price, like Zeke's just not a guy I'm that interested in going to. New England side of things, I think the inclusion of N'Keal Harry. I mean, like the problem with New England, right, is like we know they're they put they're a team that kind of puts themselves in good environments, but they're not a very condensed team. And I think it's like kind of tough to figure them out. Edelman does seem to be the one piece who's kind of the most consistent and has the most secure role carved out. So, if I'm looking at the New England side, probably Edelman is the guy I'm most interested in. Dorsett at the price, seems to have somewhat of a role carved out for him that, I feel a little more comfortable with. But like Mo Sanu, Harry, they're running backs. Like it's kind of each week unclear kind of who's the guy, that's set up best. So I don't know, a game I'm not terribly interested in getting a bunch of exposure to. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm thinking about this game.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on the Patriots here that you got, Brandon? We got a minute left before we got to get on out of here. What else are you thinking on this game?
Well, it's the New England running back situation has classically been one to avoid for fantasy. But there are certain weeks where, just as we do the Godwin's Evans bifurcation, we do in this case the trifurcation, and have with our speculative, with the lineups that are chalky in all the other spots, just save that you do the Michelle lineup, the Burkhead lineup, the White lineup, or the Burkhead's getting a little ambitious. We just do the White and the Michelle versions of the lineup because both of those guys are low price guys that have pop, and it is a weather game. We do expect it to kind of play in close quarters. Could certainly see Michelle being a very strong play at the 4,600 price tag.
Alrighty, guys, we got to get on out of here. Thanks a lot for joining us. Before you click out of this show, click the like and subscribe on YouTube for us. We would really, really appreciate it. And be sure to give Brandon and Stewart, give them a follow over there on Advanced Sports Analytics at Twitter. Go check them out at advancedsportsanalytics.com. They have some great tools, some awesome stuff going on over there. So check that out. But listen, we got to get on out of here. Have a happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you next week. For me, Travis Mangone, for Stewart and Brandon, we're out of here.